programs are not about terrorism. These are not public safety programs. These are spying programs. Their value is in intelligence gathering, not in anti-terrorism.
Welcome back. We're talking about privacy and freedom in some of the world's largest democracies. With us in studio is Shane Harris, the Senior Intelligence and National Security Correspondent for the Daily Beast website. From Melbourne, Sarah Joseph. She's Director of the Kasten Center for Human Rights Law at Monash University. Also on set is Fred Flight, Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs at the Center for Security Policy. And from Toronto, Haroon Siddiqui, a journalist and former columnist from the Toronto Star. Fred, we just heard there from Edward Snowden. In many ways, this must vindicate his revelations, doesn't it?
I don't think so, and I think Snowden has been proven to be a pathological liar. And let me tell you why. He's leaked things that had nothing to do with terrorism. He leaked the black budget that had information on every intelligence budget, a document that is so incredibly sensitive that the Washington Post will not print it. They only print it charts and tables because it will damage U.S. national security. There's many things like this. Most of the things Snowden leaked had nothing to do with the privacy of Americans or the Constitution. This is a man who wanted to hurt the United States, and in my opinion is probably working for one or more foreign intelligence services.
The question is, and Shane raised this as well, is that we wouldn't be having this debate if it wasn't for Edward Snowden.
We wouldn't be, and we shouldn't be, because this program has been monitored by the intelligence committees. It was leaked out of context. This hysteria caused a debate that simply makes no sense, and as a result, a crucial counterterrorism program has been severely damaged.
Right, Shane, here are some of the issues that have been raised by the surveillance program, and the fact is that we don't know what kind of information is being held on us. It's a sweep. It takes the information from everybody. There's no probable cause yet. They just sweep the information up. We don't know whether this information is accurate, the information that is being held, or how it's going to be used. We know of hundreds of cases where information has been misused. We know of people, hundreds of people, who have been placed on no-fly lists when they shouldn't be there, including the likes of the late former Senator Ted Kennedy. Isn't that a serious problem?
Well, I think it's a serious problem for sure, but let's also remember that there's nobody who's been proved that they were, found guilty of a crime they didn't commit because that they were wrongfully imprisoned because of these tools. I mean, the question here that I have always come back to as a journalist covering this is let's also look at the potential for abuse that is embedded in all of these programs. I think that is actually what the real anxiety for a lot of Americans is about. Not so much whether or not this information is being used to indiscriminately sweep up information on people, because frankly, we haven't seen direct evidence of harms to large numbers of people. There have been isolated cases, as you've said, and maybe that's too much for some people, but the potential for abuse in this, and we have to go back decades in this country to remember that there was a time where the intelligence community was monitoring political activists, was monitoring civil rights activists, war protesters. That, I think, really is sort of what the deep-rooted anxiety is here. It's there's a large portion of the population, as you said, that favors these rules, that frankly say, I have nothing to hide, so why do I care if they're looking at my email? That's not to dismiss people on the other side of this, but there really is a sort of a desire to curtail the potential for abuse in these programs that's really driving, I think, a lot of this debate.
Right, Haroon, let's look at the situation in Canada. Let's listen to what the Canadian Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, had to say about this new legislation being introduced in Canada. Let's watch.
Ours is a free, democratic, and tolerant country, and these measures seek to target those actions that threaten our freedom, our democracy, and our traditions of tolerance. Canada's borders have and always will be open to those wishing to build a better life for themselves and for their families. But our borders will be closed to individuals with known terrorist ties, and we will prevent those who pose a threat to Canada from obtaining Canadian citizenship.
So, Haroon, though we have Stephen Harper, the Canadian Prime Minister, talking about things like tolerance, democracy, open borders, can these things exist alongside increased government surveillance?
No, I mean, that's a kind of red herring, I mean, which Canadian is saying open the borders to terrorists? That goes without saying. Canada will remain open to law-abiding people. Of course, it goes without saying. That's not the issue. The issue is how much power is being given to security agencies, the plethora of agencies that collect intelligence and so on. I'm one of those, I'm not a radical leftist, I'm one of those who say that in times of war, in times of difficulty, the balance between civil liberty and security always tilts on the side of security, granted. Let us also presume that we are assured that there are checks and balances, but the bigger issue really is there's a kind of opaqueness to this entire program. Canada is part of one of the 5 spying club. United States, Canada, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. But we don't know as citizens what is being collected. We have a general idea, there's mass surveillance. We know from the United States what has happened. There's a kind of hysteria around this debate. There is a lack of transparency as to what is being done, what is being collected, on whom, how long it is being detained, what are telecommunication companies giving on my behalf. As a citizen, I have a right to know, I would like to know. I mean, I would like to think that is the most democratic thing to do. The next issue really is, okay, let's concede all of these things are needed. We live in times of trouble. What about accountability? You know, in the case of the United States, they say there is this intelligence committee that looks after it, but critics are not satisfied. In Canada, we have 5 agencies that collect intelligence. Maybe they need to, but the overseeing mechanism on them is very weak. And it's not me saying or left is saying it. Various judges have said this. A commission has said this, that we need a strong oversight agency over all 5 agencies.
Okay.
But the government continues to resist it. Why?
Yeah, let me go to Australia. Sarah, where does Australian public opinion fall in this debate? I mean, are the Australians prepared to give up their civil rights in return for safety?
Contrary to my personal opinion, I actually think the majority is in favour of stronger terrorism laws, probably for the same reason that 6 out of 10 Americans favour the extension of laws such as those that were in the Patriot Act a few days ago. But I'm not, you know, I do think that this is a debate where it is, we the public are at a huge disadvantage. I pick up on Haroon's point about opaqueness. I mean, we keep on being told by the security agencies, look, trust us, we need these powers. This threat is extreme. If we don't have these powers, then terrible things are going to happen. But we are not in a position to know if that's true. I mean, the cynic in me can say, well, of course security agencies want more power, and of course they believe they will use them responsibly. But you know, I do think there is a need for a balance, and there's also a need for greater debate. I'm afraid in this country, the terrorism debate can be very weak indeed as soon as people start to question greater terrorism powers, particularly, for example, the opposition in this country. They get portrayed as soft on terror, and then the whole debate becomes whether they are soft on terror rather than whether these new powers are needed. And I should add that I do think that...
You know?
Okay, one moment, Haroon, I'll get back to you. Fred, let me ask you, we've heard this issue of opaqueness, of transparency raised by both our guests over there. Is it enough for us to take the security services at their word when they say, trust us?
Well, we're not really taking the security services at their word, because security services answer to our elected representatives on the intelligence committees. Members of the House and members of the Senate are briefed on these programs. They know how they operate. That's why a majority of Democrats and Republicans on both committees supported the NSA metadata program, and members who were not on these committees did not. Now, maybe some of them wouldn't have anyway because they were libertarians or they had privacy concerns. But there's a good reason why this program has been consistently supported by the overseers. We can't brief the details of a secret intelligence program to fight terrorism for the general public. We just can't do it. That's why we have the classified hearings in the intelligence committees to oversee them.
Right, Shane, what's your view? Is it working as it should? I mean, the oversight committees in Congress, do they perform this function of actually monitoring what is going on?
Well, I mean, there's been a long debate about that very subject. I mean, one of the things that actually came out after the Snowden program was, the metadata program was revealed, is you did have some lawmakers coming forward and saying, now, wait a second, when I have been briefed on these things, I didn't understand that that's how the government was interpreting the Patriot Act to let them collect everyone's phone records. But, you know, the thing that I think is going to come out as this sort of prevailing and persistent feature about the surveillance debate now is people and lawmakers are going to demand more information. The USA Freedom Act actually injects some very significant transparency measures into how our Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which meets in secret, is now going to have to disclose some of its rulings. That's never been happened before. And I think there is going to be sort of a new layer of skepticism in the public that really starts to say, okay, well, what are you doing with the data? How rigorously is it being overseen? Tell me more than you were telling me before. And I think that's something that lawmakers are going to have to respond to. And frankly, given that they voted for the Freedom Act, they seem inclined to at least make some tilt more towards transparency than they would have under the previous authorities.
Okay. Haroon, very quickly, we just have got a little time left. terrorism is a reality. It's something that all countries around the world have to deal with, and something has to be done to combat terrorism. What, in your view, is that something?
That something really is to restore, not violate our basic democratic principles. If the argument is terrorists hate us because of our democracy, terrorists hate us because of our values, that's what Mr. George W. Bush said, that's what my Prime Minister says, that's what most politicians say. Fine, let's agree on that. If that is so, what the hell are we doing eroding exactly those very values that we say that terrorists hate us for? So, I mean, this is a kind of circular argument here. And as far as the overseeing by the Congress is concerned, the congressional record on this is very weak. How long did it take before the American government and American people and the Senate committee acknowledged that there was torture going on, that these very agencies lied to the public?
All right, so we're going to...
So we need more confidence in these measures.